Welcome to the fifth video in my series comparing my Royal Enfield Interceptor 650, my Moto Guzzi V7 750, and my Triumph Bonneville 865. In this video, I'll be sharing 5 of the reasons why my Interceptor is actually better than those bikes, and unfortunately the 5 or 6 reasons why I'm selling this bike anyway. I major in YouMotorcycle. I make videos that help motorcyclists. Today we're going to have an honest conversation about the Interceptor 650. And if you're thinking about buying one, you might want to watch this video first, because a lot of people on YouTube tend to talk about the upsides of this bike, and I'm going to be telling you about the sides of it that maybe didn't live up to my expectations. Yes, I'm selling the Interceptor and continuing the series without it, but that doesn't mean I don't like my Interceptor. There are actually 5 ways that I think it beats the competition, so here they are. First, the Interceptor is kind of like a mojito. It's smooth, it's predictable, it's calm, it's refreshing. The V7 is more like drinking a beer. It's bubbly, it's frothy, it's an acquired taste. There's no right or wrong, and honestly, I'm happy riding either one, but I guess if I got caught in some really bad weather, I would rather be on the really smooth Interceptor. 2, the only bike in this competition with a 6th gear is the Interceptor, and honestly speaking, none of these bikes are particularly great for long highway trips, but at least with the Interceptor you do get that 6th gear for overdrive, so that's nice. 3, the Interceptor's OEM and aftermarket parts tend to be cheaper than the ones for the Triumph and for the Moto Guzzi. Just do a quick search for aftermarket exhaust options for all 3 of these motorcycles and you will see exactly what I mean. And 4th, this motorcycle has a really endearing quality to it. I've said it before, but it's like a girlfriend who's not the prettiest, not the smartest, not the fastest, not the best at anything, but she's just so calm and friendly and agreeable that you find yourself falling for her anyway. That's how they get you. And last, of course, you probably knew this was coming, but the Interceptor is cheaper to buy brand new than both of those bikes. In some countries, it's a big price difference. In other countries, like where I live, it's not as big of a difference as most people seem to think. Either way, in this series, we're only looking at used bikes, so this doesn't really matter. Let's move on to the bonus thing. Okay, so the bonus thing is that the Interceptor is wildly popular on YouTube. It's basically a greasy YouTuber's wet dream. So long story short, since last year, us creators can now see not only our own video analytics on YouTube's backend, but we can see search data, trends, video performance stats, all kinds of data from all across of YouTube. So we already knew that like wildly positive reviews actually outperform fair and balanced reviews, which is why you will see certain YouTubers saying whatever motorcycle they just got on is like the best motorcycle ever for every single review they put out. But what we learned is that positive reviews on the Interceptor do ridiculously well. And that's why you'll see some channels put out not 1, not 2, but 3 or more reviews of their exact same Interceptor because they explode like crazy. So if you wanted to make the most popular best mid-size retro motorcycle series, the first thing you would do is eliminate the Moto Guzzi because it's not popular enough, and you would make a David versus Goliath battle of the Bonneville versus the Interceptor for the finale, and you would have the good underdog go over because that's how you get a ton of interaction and engagement, because we're humans, right? It's in our DNA to be cheering for the underdog, and unfortunately for my channel's growth, I care more about integrity than I do about just getting a lot of views. So let me tell you why, despite all of the good stuff about the Interceptor, I'm selling it anyway. If you've been a subscriber to my channel for a long time, you've watched my videos before, you've probably heard me say a million times, a great motorcycle isn't a motorcycle that's great when it's brand new. Any manufacturer can do that these days. A great motorcycle is a motorcycle that 5 or 10 years later is still just as great as it was when it was brand new. My 12-year-old BMW, my 13-year-old Triumph, my 17-year-old Vespa even, their paint, their chrome, their seals, everything about them, besides the odd stone chip that you get, is pretty much flawless. They haven't really aged. They're not just good as new, I'd say, with the advances in tires and brake pads and the upgrades I've made. My bikes are probably better than new, and that's the power of a great motorcycle. But my Interceptor, I gotta be honest, it's 5 years old and it's not aging as well as I would have hoped. I bought my Interceptor for $36.50 US. It's a 2018 with only 218 miles on it, and it already has damage to the paint on top of the tank. And yes, it's totally possible that one of like the only 6 times the original owner took it out, a bird pooped on it and he just didn't wipe off the poop and it damaged the paint. Maybe that could have happened, but take a look over here at the chrome on the headlight. There's no way bird poop could have landed there. It's covered by the speedometer, by the tachometer, but the finish has failed here too. So can we really blame a bad bird or a bad owner, or is it more likely that the quality of the finish of the Royal Enfield just isn't up to snuff compared to my other motorcycles? Before you answer that, let me show you something else. The way this bike is aging is disappointing me. So, especially the motor, right? So we have polished aluminum and side covers and on top. It's not sealed though. Basically, aluminum doesn't rust, but when oxygen in the air touches aluminum, whether it's outdoors or a bike stored indoors, the aluminum starts to oxidize. That's the pitting that you see. It's oxidization. It's just basic science, and most motorcycle manufacturers understand this, especially brands like Triumph that, you know, are based in cold, wet, damp climates like the UK. So most manufacturers spend extra money to seal their aluminum with clear coat to protect it from oxygen. That's why a few years ago on my channel, you saw my 13-year-old Bonneville that had aluminum engine casings and never once needed polishing, like ever. The problem is that Royal Enfield does not spend the extra time and money to do this. And I kind of get it, because oxidization as a process is slowed down in drier climates. So if you're in India, or if you're in like maybe middle of the US and down, you're not going to experience this as rapidly as those of us in other climates, where we're going to have to spend a couple hours of elbow grease every year or two to keep polishing these things to keep them looking good. And in my opinion, this could have easily been avoided. I wish Royal Enfield had just charged $500 more for this motorcycle and put that money into better quality finish. Controversial opinion, I know, but I feel like you would get it back on resale value when this thing is 5 years old or 10 years old and you want to sell it and it looks like this or like this, instead of looking like this and this and this. The other issue I have with the motor is that even though this thing only has 300 miles on it, there's already a seal that's already weeping. Quick recap, just because a lot of beginners might be interested in this bike. Gaskets and seals play an important role in your motorcycle's engine. They're designed to create airtight and watertight seals to prevent fluid leaks, to help maintain proper levels of lubrication, to avoid contamination getting into your motor that could cause damage, to maintain compression, to help your motorcycle make the most power it can make and last the longest it can last. Pause. All of my videos are aimed at helping motorcyclists, so if you want to help me out, hitting that like button lets YouTube know that other people might want to see my content, which lets me help more other riders. So yeah, please do that. Thank you so much. And I know what you're thinking. Just get it covered under warranty. Well, now it's 4 years old, it's not covered under warranty. And yes, that's the previous owner's fault, because they should have noticed it and they should have had it covered under warranty. Also, I worked at a dealership for a number of years and I never saw gaskets weeping in the first 300 miles. Compare that to the other motorcycles in my best mid-size retro motorcycle for me series, my Bonneville 865, my V7 750. These are much older motorcycles. They each have about 8,000 miles on them compared to a few hundred miles, and their motors, their seals are perfect. So seeing this gasket go in the first couple hundred miles on the Interceptor is just like, it's disappointing. It sucks. Speaking of comparisons with the Bonneville and the V7, it has 50% less horsepower, it has about 2/3 the torque, it has 2/3 the engine size, it's only worth as much. So we already touched on the Interceptor's pros. You know, we said it was smoother, it has 6 gears, it's got cheaper parts, cheaper cost, more popularity. Now let's talk about the downsides of how it compares. With the Interceptor, you don't get a sense of being on something alive like you do with the V7. The V7 just has the most character, and you also don't get the sense of being on something capable of going fast like you do with the Bonneville, because the Bonneville has the most speed. And again, a lot of this is going to be really subjective, right? Like, I've been riding for 20 years. I don't need to go fast. I don't always want to go fast, right? Most of the time I don't, but I always want to have the option of going fast. And with the Interceptor, I don't have that option, whether or not I would actually exercise it. Second, I think you won't get the same pride in ownership from the Interceptor as you would from the Bonneville and the V7 if you've owned all three of them. If you've only had the Interceptor, you're most likely gonna love it, especially if it covers all your needs and it makes you happy, then yeah, you should absolutely feel proud and enjoy your bike, for sure. But as someone who's owned all three, especially after like washing and detailing all three and being up close and having my hands on everything, every part of all three bikes, one after the other, the Interceptor is built to a price point. And again, part of why I wish they charged $500 more for it up front and just made the bike $500 better.
You guys want to know another area where they've really cheaped out? This is gray. This is a different shade of gray. They could have spent a few dollars more and made the whole bike the same shade of gray. They didn't want to do that.
Okay, so truth be told, these next 2 points might only apply to me. They may or may not apply to you, but I want to share the most fullest picture that I can, so I'm going to tell you as quickly as I can anyway. One of the recurring themes in my best mid-size retro motorcycle for me series is the financial side of it, right? I've given myself a maximum of how much I can spend on each motorcycle, which includes buying it and then doing upgrade mods to make me like the bikes more. The Interceptor was the most expensive bike of the three, and as a result, I have no budget left to customize it how I want. And so, you know, there's a cap on how happy with it I can be because my budget is maxed out. And finally, in Toronto where I live, in the last couple of decades, no Royal Enfield dealer has stayed on for more than 3 years, which is really weird. There always seems to be a breakup, a lawsuit, an owner leaving the country and never returning, a dealer outsourcing maintenance because they don't have their own technicians to a third-party company and then suing them because the work was apparently not being done well and then being countersued and whatever crazy stuff they have going on. I've only heard about third-party. Royal Enfield dealers in Toronto just seem to be a shit show for like 10, 15, 20 years now.
And this goes overseas too. If you look at what happened with, I think, Andy, the Missenden Flyer, like he lost thousands of dollars because of a fly-by-night Royal Enfield dealership. So it's not just in Toronto.
And again, pause. I want to just remind you guys, I'm trying to be as absolutely fair as I can. So I just want to say, Classy Chassis is a dealer in Lakefield. I've been there a few times now. Those guys are fantastic. Those guys are solid. But in comparison, my local Triumph dealer is 5 or 10 minutes away. My local Moto Guzzi dealer is like 10, 15 minutes away. And I've known the owners of both dealers for over a decade. So where do you feel more comfortable bringing your bike? If I didn't have my Bonneville and my V7, I would probably just keep my Interceptor and just accept it for what it is.
At the end of the day, none of these issues make the Interceptor 650 a bad motorcycle. In fact, I'd say it's actually a pretty good motorcycle. It's not the best at anything, but it is very good. If they had put that $500 directly into better finish, I would probably be keeping this bike.
That's just my take. This series isn't about telling anybody what they should or shouldn't buy. Motorcycles are a really personal thing. It's about us, you guys and me, line up these motorcycles, comparing their strengths and weaknesses, and trying to make them better. Obviously, we'll continue the series with the V7 and the Bonneville. If you're into that, please hit subscribe. But before you go, I'm dying to know what you guys think. Do you agree with my decision to sell the Interceptor? What bike would you have sold? I'd love to hear what you have to say. As always,
Thank you so much for watching. Again, I'm Adrian from YouMotorcycle. Ride safe, but have fun. Peace.